Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you've always been here, thank you so much for your support. Today I'm going to be educating myself about the World War II, the emergence of Nazism, and the Holocaust, the Jewish story unpacked. Now, full disclaimer, I know a little bit about the Holocaust because it's like a very popular story, and I do not know all the details. I do not know the nitty-gritties. I do not know the how. I do not know the why. But one thing I know is that it was like a sort of exercise by Adolf Hitler. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not too sure. I'm not certain about what I'm saying because, like I said, I don't have details on the nitty-gritty, which is the purpose of today's video, getting the details that I can, because I've always been curious as to the why, but I've never actually gone out of my way to actually study or watch or learn about the why. I know the why doesn't matter considering how much of a gruesome history this is, but it will be nice to get on with the get on to speed with the actual details of the event, because it's a very major historical event. And although we are not being taught this in history, I never came across it in history. It was just like a popular thing. I don't even know where or how I learned about it, but I picked bits and pieces here and there, but it's something that was never really taught in history school, which is the whole purpose of this channel, which is dedicated to me as a Gen Z learning history as I go, history that are not taught in school. So without further ado, let's dive right into today's video.
In the first half of the 20th century, Germany was the preeminent intellectual and cultural capital of the world, and Jews were well-integrated citizens. The emergence of Nazism and its leader, Adolf Hitler, changed Europe and led to the greatest destruction that the Jewish people have ever faced, the Holocaust. During the 1920s and 1930s, despite continuing anti-Semitism and occasional pogroms, Jewish communities were a large component of European society. Cities, villages, and towns across Europe boasted significant Jewish populations. In Germany, Jews were leading academics, artists, and politicians, as well as teachers, doctors, farmers, and shopkeepers. During this time, a fringe political movement began gaining ground in Germany, promoting an extremely racist nationalism. They were called the National Socialist Workers' Party, or Nazis, and their leader was a man named Adolf Hitler. Anti-Semitism was foundational to their ideology. In his infamous book Mein Kampf, Hitler called the Jewish people a noxious bacillus that lives as a parasite in the body of other nations. "Once I really am in power," Hitler declared in 1922, "my first and foremost task will be the annihilation of the Jews." In spite of rising support, Hitler and the Nazis initially failed to gain much ground in German parliament. It was not until after the economic collapse of 1929 that the party began to gain real political power. Social turmoil and strife led to a polarized and unstable political climate, and very quickly the Nazi Party became the largest faction in the Reichstag. In January of 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. 1 month later, the Nazis claimed that a fire at the Reichstag was started by communists planning an insurrection and used the fear of a communist takeover to abolish constitutional protections. Shortly thereafter, Hitler was given the right to govern without the consent of Parliament, effectively establishing a Nazi dictatorship in Germany. On September 15, 1935, the Nazis passed a series of notoriously racist laws called the Nuremberg Laws, which stripped Jews of their German citizenship, removed all of their political rights, and legally institutionalized their persecution. Many Jews attempted to flee the country, though their options of where to go were very limited. In September of 1939, Germany invaded Poland, officially beginning World War II. In the wake of German military expansion, a campaign of mass murder was carried out on the Jewish population. In towns and villages occupied by the German army, German military and police units, the most infamous being the SS, were instructed to carry out a war of annihilation on the Jews. Nazi soldiers, often with the help of local collaborators, rounded up Jewish men, women, children, and the elderly, took them to mass graves, and shot them to death, murdering roughly 2 million Jews within just a few years. To separate and control the Jewish population, the Nazis forced Jews into ghettos, small areas of cities and towns that were walled off from the rest of society. In 1941, it became law that Jews were required to wear a Star of David to identify them at all times. Disease in the ghettos spread like wildfire, and starvation was rampant. In January of 1942, Nazi leadership and representatives from various government ministries met at what came to be known as the Wannsee Conference to coordinate their efforts toward the efficient annihilation of the Jewish people, known as the Final Solution. Deportations to the death camps became the Nazi regime's primary tactic of mass murder. Jews were sent in cattle cars to places like Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka, forced into chambers they were told were showers, and gassed to death. Some camps, such as the infamous Auschwitz-Birkenau complex, doubled as labor and death camps, where Jews were forced to work and were then sent to the gas chambers to be murdered. This assembly line of mass murder continued for years, with thousands of Jews murdered every day. In the midst of this mass murder and destruction, despite impossible odds and relentless brutality, many Jews resisted. In the ghettos and camps, prisoners carried out acts of sabotage, smuggled weapons, and organized uprisings. Some fled to the forests, where they formed partisan units, bands of guerrilla fighters that often included both Jewish and non-Jewish fighters united against Nazism. These partisan units blew up trains, sabotaged Nazi operations, and fought head-to-head against German soldiers. Uprisings were waged in numerous ghettos, including in Krakow, Vilna, Bialystok, and Minsk. Spiritual resistance was also present throughout the ghettos and camps. Through observing holidays, studying Torah, upholding Jewish values, creating art, writing poetry, singing songs, spiritual resistors maintained dignity and upheld the strength of the human spirit even in the face of violent hatred, cruelty, and dehumanization. Throughout 1943 and 1944, the Nazis accelerated their genocidal plan. Ghettos were liquidated, and Jews from all corners of Nazi-occupied Europe were deported to death camps and murdered. Finally, in 1945, the Russian army reached and liberated Auschwitz. U.S. forces crossed the Rhine, and by April, Berlin was surrounded. Hitler committed suicide, and Germany unconditionally surrendered to the Allies. By the end of the tragic war, roughly
Hitler committed suicide? I had no idea.
6 million Jews and 5 million others, including Roma, Poles, homosexuals, the disabled, communists, and political dissidents, had been murdered by Nazis. Villages, cities, and towns throughout Europe that were once home to flourishing Jewish communities were now empty of them. Survivors of the concentration and death camps who tried to return home often found their property seized by their non-Jewish neighbors. With no recourse for reclaiming their homes or possessions, they became refugees, many ending up in displaced persons camps before moving on to form what have since become flourishing Jewish communities in the Americas and the land of Israel. The Holocaust was a brutal campaign of persecution and mass murder carried out by the Nazis and their collaborators in an effort to systematically annihilate the entire European Jewish population. The scale of death and destruction is unfathomable. But Jewish communities have since worked tirelessly to care for survivors, name the lost, build and strengthen Jewish life around the world, and educate younger generations about the horrors of the Holocaust, so that it never happens again.
You know, something I read or I saw somewhere was that when something bad happens to humans, they are likely going to find something to hate, something to blame, something to put that anger on. And you know, apparently, because I didn't know this, the Nazi movement was in existence up until the whole economic crisis and all of that. And they had people to hate. They had someone to put it on. And I think that's something very common amongst people, where like, we don't want to do the work of introspecting. We don't want to do the work of thinking. We just want somewhere, anywhere, anybody, anything to put that anger on. And I think that is what has led to this. It could be a lot more, But based on what I understand from this, that is what my take home is. It's the fact that people will constantly find something to hate, someone to hate, someone to transfer the pain to. And I think that is what happened in this situation. Let me know if you think the same. I mean, I'm going to check out other documentaries in my spare time, but I wanted to do this here and now, so like other people like me who are not well informed can also see that I'm learning it and learn alongside with me as well. But this is a very heartbreaking scenario. I know they didn't go into details like of how the torture was done, or it was just like a quick overview of everything. But it's really heartbreaking to see. I can't imagine like something like this going on. I still hear, or once in a while I see that people can still be very racist towards the Jews. And I've never been one to understand racism generally, but there is racism, and there is also the one that happens in our neighborhood, like that is not related to racism. It's just someone not liking someone else and just taking it out on them, be of the same race or be of the same religion. Human nature in its crude form is not the nicest thing, it's not the kindest thing, it's not the purest thing, really. So this hate that people take onto like a large population to a point where you want to annihilate them entirely, I think is very heartbreaking, because it's just really heartbreaking. And this is very similar to what is going on between Gaza and Israel. Like I said, I don't know much of all this. I try to run away from the news because of all these bad things. It can just be such a downer and just ruin your mood, and you're just going to be so depressed the rest of the day. But I think it's high time I put myself more into the news and digest more of that than social media, just like most Gen Zs, really. I think it's high time we're aware of what is going on around us. It's high time we're aware of what happened before us, because if we learn about our history, one thing is certain: we are not going to repeat them. So I do not know if I covered everything I wanted to say. I really just wanted to immerse myself in it and educate myself, and not just be saying things because I'm not well informed on the subject matter. But overall, yeah, it was nice to learn about the how. I had no idea Adolf Hitler killed himself, and I wonder why. And I'm going to do more research about that, because I hear he was very notorious, very powerful, and bent on taking over the world and whatnot. It's surprising that he would want to kill himself even with all of that determination. That's pretty much what I have to say right now. There's a lot more, but like I said, I want to be more informed before I revisit this again to properly talk on the matter, on the subject matter. But evil is evil, and we all know evil is evil, and we know in our hearts what evil is and what good is, regardless of our religion, race, or anything. And I just feel like many people have gotten so comfortable doing very bad things to a point where they've killed their conscience entirely. And if there is anything that I believe can keep humanity alive and can bring back faith in humanity, it's just the conscious effort to constantly keep your conscience alive, because being good is a choice as well as being bad. It's an intentional decision we have to make in every step we take. Until next time, guys, please do not forget to support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing, and turning on your notification bell so you don't miss the next video. Until next time, guys, bye.